he's talking about next season. He's still under contract at Celtic for another 2 years. So he's talking about he's going to be playing Champions League next year again. I wouldn't read too much into it because money will talk. If a bid comes in of 20 plus million and doubling his wages, we'll see what happens at that point. That's a different ballgame. At this point in time, there's not a big desire to be selling, I think, a new contract. But again, we're back to this Celtic model. If a big money bid comes in, you have to let him go because that's the whole point of the process. You have to reinvest it and then start again. He's did, 3.5 years Celtic, been a great success, player of the year. He's a hot ticket right now. So you'd expect some kind of bids to come in. So it is going to be interesting in a few weeks for him. Where he goes, I don't know. Where the bids are coming from, it'll be interesting. I don't really see him being an English Premier League kind of player. So maybe further afield. So that means that's a big financial market off the table.
Why, Mick?
I just think he's very effective, but I think his technique isn't quite as spot on for that level.
Are we talking about Daizen Maeda that Brendan Rodgers has worked with for the last couple of years, or are we talking about the one that came to the club in the first place? Because I think that there's a world of difference now.
Well, the last 6 months of Daizen Maeda, it's been a different ballgame. He's been absolutely red hot. I just think that if he's playing out wide in England, there's too many fullbacks who are on 150 grand a week who can cope with getting pressed. They don't get stressed with it. They just sidestep you and pass it out. So that kind of thing that really works in Scotland isn't as effective in England. And I think you get centre halves who, if his touch isn't quite there, they'll mop it up, and he's. You look at your Van Dijks and these kind of guys. I just think at that level, I think he might not have the technique to cut it in England at that level. That's just my own suspicion. Unless you look at the bottom half of the Premier League, he can be a tremendous asset in the break with pace. So I could be wrong. I just suspect that it might be further afield. But it just depends on what kind of bids come in. I think City would love to keep him, but the usual caveat: if that kind of money, if the bid comes in 20 million plus, they need to do business.
Well, Jason in the comment section says Celtic need to kick out any bid less than 30 million for Maeda. Every other club in the continent charge an absolute fortune. Time for us to do the same and demand obscene fees. I actually kind of agree with that, Keith. You see these players going to Chelsea and that for 100 million and stuff like that. I think if Celtic are going to part with the guy that scored 33 goals last season as Mick's reigning player of the year, I think they should kind of take the mick of it.
Yeah, look, everyone's relative. Celtic are in a financially more than comfortable situation where it's not as if they need to sell. So they don't need. We're talking about Dessers, who was the top scorer in the Premiership last season, and we're talking about Rangers looking to try and coax €5.5 million out of AEK Athens.
No.
So that's some sort of a difference or swing, isn't it, from the guy that's the top scorer that Rangers are trying desperately to get 5.5, and somebody saying £30 million for Daizen Maeda. I think it's more sort of in between. I really like Daizen Maeda. Obviously, the energy levels, and as I said there, the fact that he's added this sort of killer touch, be that in front of goal or with assists. There's more composure and quality to his work in the crucial areas than there ever was before, than I ever thought or I ever imagined it'd be possible to get out of Daizen Maeda. And that was one of the things I remember people saying at first with him. Well, if he could score goals and set up assists and put good crosses into the box, then he wouldn't be playing for Celtic. And now this is the guy that can do all of the above and still have the energy levels. So, I can understand it. I've got a funny feeling that I don't think he will be going, and I've said that fairly consistently. I think that he is happy and settled, but I will say Mick's right. If the money does talk in this game, everybody's a professional. They're in it to make a living at the end of the day. And if somebody comes in, and as the case with Dessers, as our guy in Athens there was saying, he's going to double his money, double his wages by going to Athens, that becomes pretty difficult to turn down. And that is, at that moment in time, it does become problematic because you will get the player knocking the manager's door and saying, listen, any chance, you can't hold me back here.
Right.
And if you want to hold me back, then you need to double my wages. So, it could become an issue. But I think Daizen Maeda is I expect to see him still at Celtic next season, put it that way.
As Paul saying as well, World Cup year, he might look at Kyogo and might not want to jeopardise his place.
And people have used this thing about you need to leave Celtic to get into the Japanese national side. Well, Daizen Maeda is the walking, talking, running Duracell bunny proof that that's not the case, because he's been a regular starter throughout his time, and he knows that. So there is a risk attached if he was to go someplace and then end up sitting on a bench for 12 months. Would he still be guaranteed a start at the World Cup? Not sure that he would. So I think there's a few factors there. Most of all, what I'm told about Daizen Maeda is that unlike Rio Hatate and Kyogo, he's really settled off the pitch. He's got a young family. They're enjoying Scotland. They're happy where they are. So it would need to be, a real, and he's already earning what any of the rest of us would consider to be life-changing numbers. So it would need to be double times life-changing. And even then, you've got a lot to consider. So, as I said, I've got a feeling that Daizen Maeda will still be a Celtic player next season. I strongly suspect that to be the case. Probably
Me too.
proven wrong.